So first we'll talk about vibrato. There are three types of basic vibrato that we do. We do what's horizontal style vibrato. You see lots of violinists and classical guitar players do that more than you do electric guitar players. You have what's called a scratching type vibrato, and you also have what's called a fly technique, which is what B.B. King uses a lot. So I'm going to give you a demonstration here first of the horizontal style vibrato. Basically what you're doing is you're just kind of moving your hand back and forth along the parallel with the neck of the guitar while keeping your finger between the frets. And when you're moving that, it's applying the vibration part of the technique. It's a very subtle sounding vibrato. All right, the next technique, which is used quite a bit, is called a scratching type of vibrato. This is what's done generally with the third finger, and I like to use also my second finger with it. So this is what it sounds like. Here's a demonstration, and we'll talk about the technique part of it. So what I'm doing here is I'm locking my fingers in place. I'm using my first finger here like a fulcrum point, and it's a twisting motion, and you're actually pulling the string out of tune slightly. This is also the same technique we will use when we do bending and vibrato together. Okay? The last technique that we're going to use is called a fly technique. Now this is generally done with our first finger, and it's the same motion basically as the scratching type. We're still using our first finger here as a fulcrum point. The reason why they call it a fly technique is because your thumb and your pinky sit out here like wings. So you've ever heard B.B. King? And that's your fly technique. Okay, so in my last song I did quite a bit of those types of vibratos, and different kinds of vibratos. Really wide vibrato, and very narrow vibrato, slow vibrato, and fast. So there's a lot of different ways you can do vibrato. And I always tell my students that, always find like your favorite players and try to emulate what they're doing. How fast the vibrato is, how wide the vibrato is, how much the string is bending. Now the other facet to playing blues guitar that's really important is bending strings. Obviously that's what I did just a few seconds ago. And there are primarily two types of bends that we use a lot in guitar. There's what's called whole step and half step bends. A whole step basically is one fret movement, okay, or a semitone as some people call it. So to do this, you basically just have to be able to bend the string up a half step. Now there's an exercise you can do that really helps you with this. It's simply just play a note. We're going to start here. The note we're going to be bending is on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And what you're going to do is you're going to play the note on the 8th fret. Then you're going to move down to the 7th fret and just simply bend it up to make it sound like the pitch we just heard. And we can do this chromatically. And that's one really good exercise to do when you're bending strings. And you'd want to also do that on these 3 strings, the 3rd, the 1st, and 2nd strings, because the tension is going to be different. It's going to feel different. A little note about bending also. Generally with these 3 strings, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd strings, your E, B, and G strings, we generally bend those up. The reason why, obviously, is because there's more neck to play with. If you try to bend them down, you may run out of neck, and hence not be able to bend to the correct pitch. With the 6th, 5th, and 4th strings, you're going to pull the strings down, as Jeff Beck would do. Okay? So we already talked about the directions about bending notes. Now the other thing I do, if you notice, is I like to use 2 fingers when I bend. It gives me more control. And unlike when you play classical style stuff, when with the thumb behind the neck, the thumb comes over top of the neck, so you can actually get much more control and strength on the bend itself and really dig in. That's where you get your sound and your tone. So we can also do this exercise for whole step bends, which is a whole step or a whole tone, which is 2 fret minimums. And it's basically the same thing. You would play a note up a whole step, which for here, this is our object note we're going to bend. We would move it up to the 9th fret of the guitar. Simply move down to the 7th fret, play the note first on the 9th fret, got ahead of myself, and then repeat that chromatically. Now this is a little bit tougher because you got more tension and you got to push the string up. Now both these exercises are great, not just for bending, they're great for your ear, so you can hear the difference. It's really like you're also giving yourself ear training in what moving a whole step and what a half step sounds. Well, that concludes the lesson for today.